Morning. Hope you're having a great morning. Welcome to Peace Out, where we always end up finding His peace, right? No matter where we start, what scripture we start with, what thought we start with, wherever we start in our journeys for today, because today's going to be a journey one way or the other. Be a relationship journey. Today's going to be a journey because there's going to be stuff that happens. Not bad stuff necessarily, but just the course of a day is a journey, and we make decisions that set up or fight against our journey for tomorrow, right? They make tomorrow's journey easier or harder, right? Decisions are so important, but we ain't talking about that this morning, okay? Actually, I've been studying about prayer. I need you to, if you get a chance, go follow my YouTube channel because I've got two different videos that I'm going to be adding pretty soon. I don't know if I'll get to it this weekend, but I might. I got some stuff going on in my head, in my heart. But I've been studying about prayer. I've told you that before and studying about prayer, so this morning as I was studying, and yesterday actually as I was meditating on some of it, I was like, there's so many different kinds of prayers in the Bible. We have some famous ones. The Lord's Prayer. Even people who aren't saved know the Lord's Prayer, right? Our Father who art in heaven, which isn't really the Lord's Prayer, it's really the model prayer. And I was actually thinking about it this morning while I was reading some prayers this morning in different books of the Bible. But we think about sometimes we think that prayer is just asking God for something. Well, that's not the whole thing, right? We can ask Him for peace. He's already given us peace. Maybe our declaration is a sense of prayer. Maybe our declaration is, I'm going to praise you today, right? But prayer can be asking God for something. We see that all through scriptures, right? Where they're asking God for, maybe we'll ask Him for peace. Maybe we'll ask Him for wisdom. As a matter of fact, we're instructed to ask Him for wisdom, right? Ask for wisdom and He'll give it to you. It's that simple. And then mouth, out of His word comes knowledge and understanding, right? So we're told to ask for wisdom. So prayer, it does involve asking for stuff. You may ask for direction. How do I proceed in this situation? God, help me. You may ask God for provision. You may ask Him to help settle an argument. You may ask Him for a lot of different things. You could ask Him for peace in our nation. We could ask Him for people's hearts to turn back to Him, right? There's a lot of things to ask God. But prayer isn't always asking. Sometimes we look at the prayers in Psalms, and David almost sounds like he's complaining, right? Why are my enemies? They're fighting me again, right? Well, yeah, he had some real live enemies, right? In flesh and blood enemies. Our enemies are doubt, fear, selfishness, maybe discomfort, losing hope, things like that are our enemies. Our enemies aren't a physical person that's coming at us most of the time, right? We may find ourselves in those situations. Hopefully we've prayed for protection and God will protect us and that will happen, right? But we never know. Our enemy, in fact, I was talking to a friend about this earlier this week. Our enemy, what he wants is our faith. He wants us to not trust God anymore. He wants us to, what our enemy really likes to do, the enemy of our souls really likes to tempt us, trip us up, and then make fun of us and go, see, you're not even worthy of God's love. Well, no, of course I'm not worthy of God's love, but I am worthy of God's love, right? Because God said, I'm worthy of His love. God loves me. So our prayers are sometimes to get away from enemies, but I was thinking about the different kinds of prayers, like Daniel's prayer. And I think it's in chapter 11, but don't quote me on that one. Maybe 9, but I think it's chapter 9. But towards the end of Daniel prayed, and his prayer was not a bad thing, but he had realized that he had been a captive for 70 years. He'd lived his lifetime as a slave. Now he had some privileges others didn't because God had promoted him and he actually ran the country, just under the similarly to how God did with Joseph, right? But he had lived his life in a foreign land, his whole life, 70 years, you guys. He had been a captive, and his prayer that we like to read is a powerful prayer, and it was like, "Hey, God, I see that." I just read Jeremiah again, and he said we were only going to be here 70 years, and it's 70 years. So what's happening? When are you doing this? When are you going to say, when are you going to do what you said you're going to do? So that was a powerful prayer, right? We had the Jesus's prayer in John 17, and I'm looking at all these different prayers, and and then as I was studying, I thought, all the prayers weren't really asking for something specific, right? Some prayers were giving more had a an attitude of more like giving thanks or something, right? So, and I thought of Hannah. Now she prayed first and said, "Please God, give me a son. Remove my reproach." Right? What a heartfelt, sincere prayer, and it had to have been because God answered her and gave her Samuel. And then she kept her vow to God and gave Samuel back and took him to the temple. And he served his whole life. And we have a whole book written about Samuel. We don't have anything else written about Hannah, right? But then Hannah, when when she found out she was pregnant, she has a beautiful prayer of thanksgiving. Just a beautiful, heartfelt prayer of thanksgiving, right? And we have that one. We have Mary when she found out she was going to have Christ, and she goes to see Elizabeth, and their prayers and the first couple of chapters of Luke, I think it is there. Those are beautiful prayers of just thanksgiving and gratitude. So it's not always asking. Sometimes it's receiving. Sometimes it's just, wow, God, you are so good. That's the best prayer ever, right there. It can be the simplest prayer, can be the most effective and change the most aspects of our lives. I don't think I said that right, but I hope you got the idea, right? And so I was thinking about all these different things. And so then this morning, where I spent most of our time was reading Solomon's prayer. And here he had worked all these years to build the temple, and God's glory filled the temple. And chapter 6 of Second Chronicles is his prayer, and the people are all singing, "The Lord is good, his mercy endures forever." And they had that phrase, and they just were praising God and thanking God for visiting them, right? But see, the temple didn't come just the temple came in Solomon's time, but there was a lot of players in that brought that all together. David started years before collecting stuff. And then God said, "David, you don't get to build my temple, but Solomon's going to." And so Solomon built up with what David had given him. And man, there's a whole lesson there. We'll do that. Maybe we'll do that later. But that's why you need to keep up with my YouTube channel, because there's going to be some stuff up there, and prayer is going to be one of them. But it's looking more like a series instead of a sermon now. So, but there's this beautiful prayer in Second Chronicles 6 of Solomon, his prayer of dedicating when he's accomplished his mission. He built a temple for God, and yet even in his prayer, he was like, "But will God indeed dwell with men on earth? Behold, heaven and the heaven of heavens can't contain you." He starts with he starts right at the very beginning of similarly to the Lord's Prayer. When the Lord's Prayer starts with "Our Father who art in heaven," and Solomon's going, "God, you're in heaven, but even the heavens don't contain you. How can I build a house that can contain you? But please just visit us here." It's just this precious prayer. He's like, "Please hear our supplications, hear our prayers. When people gather here, hear our prayers, meet us here." It was this real personal prayer. If you get a chance to read it today, it's Second Chronicles 6, almost the whole chapter. And he's saying, when we sin and we come back to you, please forgive us and hear our prayer. When we mess up, when we bring our grief, and even that's what I'm going to talk about in my caregivers devotion today, because he says, and when they come with the burden of their own grief and spreads out his hands in this temple, hear and heal. It's a beautiful prayer, kind of an intercessory prayer between God and man here on earth. And it's beautiful. And then he tells at the very end of that prayer, he says this: "Now therefore arise, O Lord, to your resting place." You know what's really cool about that verse though? Since we are the temple of God now, because Jesus broke down the veil that was holding his presence back, so to speak, we are the temple of God. First Corinthians talks about it. I believe it's around 3:16 ish. It says we are God's temple now. I'm God's temple, and collectively we are the physical temple now. It's not a building. We make up that building, us as believers, right? And so when he's praised, "Arise to your dwelling place," or arise to your resting place, that's us now. God wants to just live with us. He chases us because he wants that relationship with us. It's a beautiful prayer. It's not begging God for something. It's not asking for money. It's not asking, hey, those are prayers I pray a lot. I will say that. But it's just this beautiful prayer of, "Hey, I built a place for you." And you know what? We can say that right here, right now, too. We can say, I built a place for you. I'm going to clean this out. I just want to be your dwelling place. I want to be the place where God can just rest in me and on me and walk with me through life. And you know what? When you pray that, it matches what God prayed. It matches what Jesus prayed in John 17. It matches the Lord's Prayer, the model prayer he taught his disciples. Live with us, and God will meet us there. But here's the coolest thing about this prayer. Chapter 7, verse 1 says this: when Solomon had finished praying, get this, I don't think I want this to happen, okay? But this is cool. Fire came down from heaven and consumed the offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of the Lord filled the temple. Isn't that amazing? What would you do if that, I think, what would I do if that really happened? What would I do if I prayed and the fire came down from heaven? You know, we see in Exodus, Moses is he's distracted by that fire. God's using fire to get his attention. But what if I prayed and then fire came down from heaven? Wouldn't that would be amazing and really scary, right? We don't expect that today. You don't expect that, and that shouldn't happen, right? Thankfully, that won't happen because we house God's fire. We are God's house. And so I encourage you today to just pray. You can talk to God about anything, and that's what I'm discovering in all these different prayers in Psalms and here in Chronicles, even in the New Testament, and the way Jesus prayed, and the way Paul prayed for the church. He prayed for them to know God more and to understand more about His ways and things. And this similar to what Solomon prayed here. The whole thing is prayer is just talking to God. So I just encourage you today to talk to God. And you know what? Nothing's off limits. We see in the Psalms, you can tell him anything. You can ask him anything. It's just like having a best friend. I'm not afraid to tell my best friend from when we were like 8 years old, well over 50 years ago, 54 years ago, my friend Ginger, I can tell her anything. And she's still going to be my friend. We can tell God anything, and he's not going to say, really? I didn't know that. Get out of here. No, he just wants a relationship with us. Doesn't that just blow your mind that this God that created everything wants me to put his fire in me, so to speak? He wants me to be his resting place. He wants a place where he can just sit and go, this is cool. We're that. That's just amazing to me. That just blows my mind. It really does. And it helps me get to that place where I can find that peace because he really isn't mad at me. He's really not mad at you. He really just wants a relationship with us, and he wants us to just say, hey, God. And at that moment, he stops everything. Yeah, someone is talking to me, and we have his undivided attention, and he loves that moment. So enjoy those moments. Take time to just talk to God about anything and everything today, and let his peace fill your heart. Because why? Because this is where we peace out. Peace out. You guys have a great day. I'll see you in the morning.